Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Phenomenon, a Paranormal Podcast. I'm here today with my co-host, Anthony.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
And we are going to be doing part 2 of our series on the Yucca Man. For those of you who haven't listened to part 1, I highly suggest you listen to that first.
Yeah, please do. And every review and share you do really helps our podcast out. So wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, follow us. But yeah, listen to part 1 because we're having a part 2 because we had so much to talk about the first time. We didn't even get to everything.
Right, and thank you to everyone who has listened because it has, really been good to see the numbers go up every day, and every little bit helps. So, Do we want to continue this journey of the Yucca Man?
I think so. There's so much more to talk about that you wouldn't think there would be for a creature like this, who's very unknown.
Right.
To most people, but there's a lot that goes with this that I think people don't even realize.
Well, do you want to continue on with kind of where we left off?
Yeah, we had just finished, I think, talking about, the Edwards Air Force Base soldiers and the soldiers who had been coming back from a hunting trip and saw the cement monster.
Right, another nickname for our friend.
Yeah, they were on their way back to 29 Palms, and they saw the creature, the cement monster, come out of an old cement mine that is supposed to be haunted by this creature and whatever else is there.
Right.
That's where we had kind of left things off, I think, last time. Today we're going to be discussing an area known as the Devil's Punch Bowl.
All these lovely names,
yeah,
right?
some really great names. It really inspires hope in people.
But now that was an area where it's, I think, where they say the high desert sort of meets the mountains.
Yeah.
In San Bernardino.
Desert meeting the mountains is a recipe for monsters.
Apparently.
So.
Well, it kind of makes sense, though, if you're thinking about all the usual sightings of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Are usually in the mountain areas, right? But then if it's crossing right into the desert, it makes a lot of sense that people see the Yucca Man. So
I mean, I definitely have my theories on why that is too, but I mean, that's a whole another discussion. But right. I mean, that definitely, there's a reason for that, I think. So I think that's a very good point.
Right.
Wilderness meeting another sort of wilderness, areas that humans really don't go to naturally on an everyday level,
Well, if birds fly south for the winter, and if we vacation in Florida to get away from cold weather, I guess it makes sense that maybe a cryptid would do something similar, right?
Yeah.
I guess maybe that would be something to look at. What times of year were the sightings in the desert area versus the mountains?
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, is it transitionary for the seasons? It's really an interesting point.
That's true, because he is very hairy, so I think you want to go where it's cooler, in those months. But at any rate, that area, I guess in 2012, which is not that long ago, he was sighted at the Devil's Punch Bowl many times, stalking hikers at Big Rock Canyon.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, going for a hike in the mountains, just for an everyday hike. And seeing a creature like this is going to be a frightening experience for anyone.
Well, especially if you say that he was stalking them. It's like that's a little unnerving.
Yeah, I mean, when you think stalking, is he purposely hiding far enough away to be seen, but not enough to be, a danger? I mean, what is he doing back there?
Yeah,
is there an intelligence to it, or is it instinct?
Well, we talked about that, with people being afraid, but yet is this just a creature in his natural habitat trying to protect, his home?
Yeah. And
keep people away through fear if he's intelligent? Or like we were just, watching ourselves, with Tyler Strand from Hellier doing the Bigfoot hunt last night, and, talking about the different strange tree formations that are often found where Bigfoot sightings are.
Yeah. The markers are what they called them. It's almost like the trees aren't broken naturally. It's almost as if something large had broken the branches off and rearranged them in a way to be a symbol, a marker of some sort, whether it's for territory or to drive people away from it? I mean, no one knows for sure. It's all theory right now.
Right.
But it speaks to a higher intelligence of, okay, how can I keep people away from this area?
I mean, there's that, or is it maybe he doesn't always stay there, so it's a mark of this is where his land is as a reminder.
Yeah.
Who knows? We really don't know. But
especially if you get into the whole, is he sticking to this realm or not kind of thing.
Interdimensional, right?
If he doesn't always stay in this dimension or this universe, does he need these markers to tell him, okay, when he's in this universe, this is where he is, this is where his home, his base is?
Right, exactly.
I
mean, it makes a lot of sense, and there are more than one possibility, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, when it comes to the area of the Devil's Punch Bowl, I mean, here we have another example. It says the San Bernardino mountain range that runs from Joshua Tree National Park, which is a big area of sightings of the Yucca Man, down or up to San Gregorio and Barton Flats, where they have summer camps.
Right.
And there have been generations of kids that have suffered sleepless nights as a diabolic forest monster lurked beyond the cabins.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you could say urban legend,
right,
campfire stories,
right,
that have been maybe passed down through generation. But then you go, okay, a lot of urban legends are often traced back to real, true events.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things that people need to remember about these things is most legends and myths have a small little kernel of truth buried inside of it. There's some sort of basis for where these legends were born and grew from. I think years and years of being told and told over again kind of grow the legend to, bigger proportions than it could be.
Right.
But there is some truth to it.
Excuse us, we had an Amber Alert during our podcast. So.
Yeah, recording this live, you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly, so forgive that.
Yeah, forgive us for that. But anyways, yeah, there's always some sort of truth layered underneath all of that, larger than life legend going on. And I think that's something important to remember.
That's very true. I mean, the idea of these things comes from somewhere, and we're going to get to a lot of that history.
Yeah.
But aside from that, of course, we talked a little bit about sightings that were centered around San Diego, and their loving name for this creature there is the Borrego Sandman.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to get into a lot of detail about that because that could be a whole entire another episode that we do.
Yeah, definitely.
But it does bring us to what we're going to talk about next, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this Sandman, Borrego Sandman, it's just, is it a separate creature? We don't know. We'll have to discuss that another time. But it ties into a very, turbulent point in history for the area, seen by the 20th century gold hunters and rock hounds in the area. They often would describe seeing a creature with whitish fur and glowing red eyes. You see glowing red eyes.
All the time.
It's either glowing red eyes or glowing blue eyes, but the eyes seem to be a very key component of these creature sightings.
Well, because sometimes they couldn't even necessarily make out the figure itself as well as they could the eyes that would be glowing.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, they've also been described as shadowy and unable to really to tell what kind of form they have, but the eyes always remain the same.
Right.
Which speaks to me about, are these creatures necessarily corporeal? Are they here?
Right.
There's a lot of stories that go into that where, creature sightings often are linked to other kinds of paranormal activity.
Right.
Whether it's ghosts, spirits, UFO sightings, other cryptids. There's a lot of, it seems like areas like this will not just have one thing, but many different things.
And it's usually those are the big three. It'll be a cryptid sighting, a UFO sighting, and some sort of paranormal activity.
Yeah, I mean, I can even give you an example, and this is just one story, and I can't even say for sure that they're all directly connected. It's just that this area seems to have a buildup of energy that kind of allows this kind of activity to grow and prosper.
Exactly.
A little bit. So, in the 29 Palms area,
That's big favorite area of the Yucca Man sightings.
Big area for the Yucca Man. There's a story from a woman who lived near the old Marine Palm section of the base in 1996 with her husband when he was stationed there. She one night got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. It was around 3 a.m. She was there with her husband, her 2 sons, and 2 of her young nieces.
Okay.
When she went to the bathroom, she was washing her hands, and all of a sudden she heard a loud, gruff male voice just kind of scream, "Get out," at the top of his lungs. Of course, she's looking around. There's no one there. There's no one else in the house. It was definitely aggressive to her and scared her, but she didn't want to scare her husband, and come across like, maybe she was losing her mind, so she didn't want to bring it up to him, so she went back to bed. But that didn't last long, because 15 minutes later, she heard her nieces yelling next to her, and her niece was yelling that someone was pulling her hair.
Right.
Well, when she turned around to look at her niece, one of her niece's pigtails was being held up in the air by something unseen, as if something was pulling her hair as hard as it could.
A little unsettling.
Yeah, so she had to run and take her nieces with her to another room to find some sort of safety, and left her husband and her sons, in the room by themselves. And it got to the point where her not even being a believer religiously, had the local military base's chaplain come to bless the house.
Right.
This is what it got to. This is just one example, but there are many instances like this where an area that is known to have these cryptid sightings, Yucca Man, Borrego Sandman, whatever. These areas will also have other stories associated with ghosts and, UFO sightings.
Right, which, we talked about on the last episode of the area of the Mojave Desert in general is just rampant with UFO sightings.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense that these could all be grouped together. And I think, we talked about the idea of a break in the veil, being sort of, an easy access for all of this stuff to happen.
An area where reality is at its thinnest, I think, in our world, where the barrier between our world and whether you think it's, another dimension, another universe, time itself. Who knows? There's all sorts of theories.
Of course.
But basically an area where energy from the universe can easily spill out of,
right,
more so than anywhere else in the world. I think that's an example of one of many areas around the world that have places like this. I don't think it's just one place. I think it's many places.
Oh, I'm sure. And, there are a lot of key elements that seem to have that sort of activity, whether we talk about mines, abandoned mines, tunnels, caves, areas where there is a lot of quartz. You can even we know, of course, things like this across the United States, but you look at the caverns and tunnels under Paris, the catacombs, and different areas where it just seems like the energy is much more harnessed.
Even Stonehenge has been reported to have this kind of energy inside of it. Scientists are still just trying to study and discover the origins and nature of Stonehenge, but places like that, or the Pacific Islands with the Easter Island heads.
Right.
We have these great feats of architecture or masonry that have like a historical base to it.
Exactly.
But what people don't always look deeper into is that there are many reports of paranormal activity or UFO sightings or cryptids. There are things associated with these areas.
Right.
And the underneath, tone of it all is that there are high readings of some sort of energy associated with it. Where this energy is coming from naturally is what's interesting and unique to me.
That's the continuous question. And this also goes back to Mothman, which, of course, there are many UFO sightings around that time.
Oh, yeah.
The Men in Black are involved. They even had the Men in Black or FBI, CIA come out for the Yucca Man. So, these things all seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah, it always seems like they're all kind of stacked on top of one another, and definitely seem like there are people who know about it.
Oh, I'm sure.
That's getting into conspiracy theory territory, obviously, but I definitely don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that there are people whether they're in power or just know of the power, who kind of keep this kind of out of public eye.
Well, I think that there's always so much else going on in the world, especially now, that, people are too busy to question things like this anymore. I think it used to be questioned more, but now it's just like everyone's constantly worried about something else that's happening.
Yeah, no one has time to really question the bigger things in life because there's always so much, going on. There's so much, chaos, tragedy, everything going on in the world. Who has time to sit down and question things?
Right. Well,
like this.
The select few, I guess, people who are still, taking that time to do it, which is great.
Yeah.
We should probably talk about the gold rush era of this.
Yeah, this is a very interesting point in history. I guess I'll start off with the headline of this area known as Dead Man's Hole. Right. During the gold rush era especially, was reportedly the home of a mass murderer, which was also the sighting of this creature. This whether it's a Yucca Man, Stand Man, the missing link, some people have called it.
Right.
Sasquatch. I mean, there was a mass murderer in this area.
This was when, in the late 1800s?
Yes, and it was home to many prospectors and bandits who came to the area either to escape the law or to find gold, what have you. A large deposit of gold was discovered at Julian.
Right.
And in the desert to the east, and it brought a lot of miners to San Diego County, and especially its desert area.
Right.
And there were a lot of stagecoaches loaded with suspicious characters. There's even one character named Pegleg Smith. Yeah, an interesting name, Pegleg.
We need to get back to these really cute nicknames in life, right?
I think modern day criminals need to take a page and Pegleg Smith. I mean, how do you top that?
That's a classic right there. But that you would think a pirate, but no.
No, it's a miner.
He's a miner. Okay,
claimed
go ahead.
to find and then lose a mine near the Salton Sea, where gold nuggets could be picked up off the ground.
Again, a mine. I just want to point that out. I'm sorry that he lost it. That's kind of tragic.
I know.
Okay.
And then a couple of characters from Julian named Edward Dean and Charles Cox claimed to have shot a Sasquatch dead. They claimed to have killed a Sasquatch in this area.
Yeah, those reports are always interesting because, that comes along with, okay, where's the body?
Yep.
And here we sit. So what happened with these guys and their body?
Well, in 1878, there was an article in the San Diego Daily Transcript that reported that the men had found and then killed the monster at Dead Man's Hole,
okay,
which was northeast of Warner Ranch at the time. The delivery of the mysterious creature's corpse was promised by these men, but of course it never appeared. It never appeared in San Diego. So kind of the story died with that.
Right.
Nothing was ever said of it again, but a century later, a Daily Transcript reporter named Herbert Lockwood went and dug for the story and found it in an 1878 issue dated April 1st.
Okay.
So the little headline or little blurb here says, while Yucca Man and its cohorts are often described as huge, hair-covered humanoids, there are nearly as many reports of shadow beasts lacking any real definition beyond their brilliant glowing eyes. You notice he doesn't specify whether it was red or blue because it's always changing.
Always changing.
Now that's an interesting thing. It goes back to what I was talking about with, the reports of paranormal, of ghosts.
Right.
Whether these creatures are always physically here or are they able to kind of shift?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It begs the question. There's been more than one account of someone claiming to have shot one of these creatures, and never can anyone produce a body. Is that because this is a lie and they never did shoot one, or is it because they had a body but then the body just got lost, much like the mine that got lost in the Salton Sea?
Here's the thing. I think it's good to approach things with a healthy amount of skepticism. I think there are a lot of cases of, we even see it nowadays where people claim to have shot a sea monster.
Right.
And then it turns out it was a regular animal that had, a birth defect or a mutation of some sort that made it look monstrous, but it really was just like, it was a dog or something like that,
Right.
However, being, that we explore the paranormal and cryptids and UFOs, we know that there are things out there that defy our current understanding of the universe.
True.
So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that these men could have shot a creature that didn't fit modern day animals that we know of in the area. But if it's not, dedicated or based out of this world that we're in, could it have gone back to where it came from? Could its energy have gone back to the source? I mean, we don't know.
No.
Because, obviously no one's ever been able to capture one of these creatures alive. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they could have taken one of these things and then it just disappeared.
That's, the only way you can look at it, I guess, right now. That or, just something that didn't actually happen, just part of the lore.
Mm-hmm.
But, this thing with the mass murders here in this area at the time, there were people that claimed to have seen, as you mentioned, a missing link near Warner Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
They described it as a bear-like giant with a human face. And, this became really interesting at the time because there were many unsolved murders at Dead Man's Hole, which was a big stop for, these miners. There's a water stop area.
Yeah.
But the bodies have been piling up at that water hole for 2 decades.
And a number of different kinds of victims. It's not like today where when you see the actions of a serial killer, you ask, okay, what was the kind of victim they were after?
Right, one common link did they have?
But, there were several different. There was a French Basque shepherd.
Right.
There were several dubious individuals, as they say. They're pretty much criminals.
Right.
On the run from law or even creditors. But there was also a wealthy San Franciscan named William Blair. So, you're talking about a wide variety of different kinds of people were found murdered at this spot. And what's interesting about the murders is that all of their necks were broken or bruised. So definitely either strangulation or a snapped neck of some sort.
Right.
But all the money and gold that they had on them, which at the time there was a lot of gold being transported along this area, it was never taken. It was always left with the victims at the spot. So it was not robbery from a person at the time. There was no robbery happening because that gold would have been gone.
Well, see, this is an excellent point because, as you say, all this gold that's been, people are actively going there looking for gold.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be very reasonable, I guess, for the time, because there was very little law and order going on, to say, okay, there was someone or some people waiting for others, waiting to take their claim and kill them without a thought at the time. But no, the money's still there.
Yeah.
So then you have to think what we were talking about earlier. Okay, with all these sightings in the area, does that mean that, yes, this creature was, all of a sudden it has its own territory, its own land, and these people, these humans come because, look, they found gold, and all these people are rushing to the area, and is it scared? Is it terrified his, habitat is going to be taken over, and it's trying to maybe protect it, and that's why these murders started happening.
Other thing, too, to remember is that people, as a general rule, kind of act out of fear without really taking the time to analyze the situation.
Right.
Could they have seen this creature and immediately thought it was there to hurt them?
Right.
And if they had weapons, did they fire upon this creature and it defended itself?
Yeah.
I think everyone always jumps to the conclusion that it was a malicious, evil creature to begin with and that it was doing it on purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
But if this is, an animal or a humanoid who is local to this area, if someone comes to your home unannounced and starts taking things out of your home and you're like, what's going on here? And then if they attack you, of course you're to defend yourself.
Right.
And especially if you're not part of our world, you don't know what we know. It's easy to assume that something is evil, but it's a lot harder to take the time to analyze the situation objectively and ask yourself, was this an evil attack or was this just an innocent creature who felt threatened in its home? When you corner a snake, what's the snake going to do?
It's going to strike.
It's going to strike. It doesn't mean it's evil. That's a natural reaction for a snake to protect itself.
Right, exactly. And what I find interesting about that point too is the last unsolved murder in that area was in 1922. There had been a 64-year period from the beginning of when they started finding these bodies until 1922, and then suddenly they stop, and you have to start wondering, about what's going on during that time in the 20s. Things are being built.
Yep,
Industry is being established. You know, you're going to get an influx of more and more humans as things start getting built up.
The gold rush was dying down.
Exactly. So does that mean that the creature finally could have realized that, you know, there were just too many people to fight off anymore, and he's got to, you know, recede back into the mountains and go elsewhere, come out sparingly and not, you know, try and threaten these people because clearly it's not his territory anymore. You know, that timing to me is really significant.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting to me too about the area is, obviously, since that time, there have been no recorded, you know, attacks or murders in the area. They suddenly just stopped, like you said.
Right.
In today's era, Deadman's Hole, or Deadman Hole, on modern maps, is actually located in a grove of live oaks, about 15 yards east of California State Highway 79, which is about an 8-mile drive up from Warner Springs, the area that the creature had also been sighted on by ranchers.
Right.
Well, it's just southwest of the place called Taqui, at the headwaters of the Santa Margarita River. Now, what's interesting about this is Taqui is another name associated with the Native American lore of the area.
That's right.
The area that the Yucca Man and the Missing Link and all these creatures have been sighted in, and everything we'll be talking about today, has a very deep-seated basis in Native American lore. We're talking about 3,500 years ago. This is when the lore started, well before Europeans ever stepped foot onto this place. The area we're talking about was, you know, lived in by the Tongva people, who kind of took over this area, the Santa Ana River area, called the Devil's Hideout, and the San Bernardino Mountains. They kind of settled this land 3,500 years ago, and this kind of became their land, their kingdom, their tribe.
Right.
And they went to the river source in the San Bernardino Mountains of the camp of the Taquis. It's actually pronounced Taquits, to the Kahula of Agua Caliente, which is another tribe that was in this area.
Right.
What's interesting,
which still has land there to this day.
Yeah, they still have land there.
Okay.
I mean, this is, you know, Native American land.
Right.
And a lot of you'll notice a lot in Southern California, but especially, you know, the high desert, San Bernardino, even the street names still have Native American names to them. I mean, the Native American culture and history is deeply embedded into this area.
Well, every street where we live, is, you know, has a Native American name.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are more obvious than others, but there are still a lot of names. And Native American culture has a deep impact on the area, whether people want to realize it or not, or admit to it or not.
They're a forgotten people still in areas like this. So
what people don't realize is they may be forgotten, but they had experiences with this stuff well before we did, well before Europeans came and settled this land. And then the Europeans came and settled, and then all of a sudden the devil's campground was established. You know, the creatures were sighted, and they were assumed to be demonic or evil in origin. But yet, what people don't realize is, to the Native Americans, these creatures weren't always evil. They were sometimes, but a lot of these creatures were key players in their creation stories.
Exactly.
And their culture and their mythology, these creatures had a basis for the creation of the world. You know, the name Taquits also survives as a site name at the head of the Santa Margarita River, at Temecula Creek. You'll find these names, and especially this name, throughout Palm Springs and even Coachella Valley. You know, they feel like the area has an angry specter kind of to it. They call it the unhappy home in the region and cursed canyon, Taquits Canyon. So,
well, and that's interesting too when you say specter, because as we've talked about, you know, we mentioned the fact that a lot of Bigfoot researchers and hunters and enthusiasts, you know, have this theory of Bigfoot being an interdimensional being.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we start talking about something like specters, start talking about the glowing eyes and bodies disappearing and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't just now. This goes way back to the Tongva people, and how they describe it is really interesting to me in this regard, because we talk about the UFO sightings also playing a role. So go ahead and touch on that.
Well, specifically for the Tahkeets, they definitely say they played a role in the creation stories and Kahula culture. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The creature was an omen, or simply something weird in the wilderness that should be avoided. Yet to the Kahula, the Tahkeets could be the original shaman as well. But in other instances, it was a murderous monstrosity that collected victims from Tahkeets Rock, or otherwise known today as Lily Rock. At the time, these beings, these creatures, had also been able to manifest as a large green fireball moving through the night sky. Now, to modern day paranormal and UFO enthusiasts, what does that sound like to you?
Well, there's a couple things that you could say. You could say, okay, well, Native Americans back then, what do they know about meteors or shooting stars or anything like that?
Yeah.
Could that have been that? Or a UFO enthusiast might say, well, could this be a UFO sighting?
Yeah.
When they see this going through the night sky, it's hard to say, obviously, from just those, that description.
Yeah.
But you have to look at, the whole picture.
Yeah.
The Native Americans, I don't care which tribe you're referring to, but they have long ago these stories of, who they worship in their culture are the sky people.
Yeah. And there's actually one entity in particular that I found interesting. And I think you could call this a synchronicity, because it actually ties into the Hellier case a little bit.
Right.
Loosely. And again, I always say I'm not directly connecting any one case to another.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting. During Hellier's investigation, at one point, they had gone back to that cave in the season 1 and done a spirit box session.
Right.
And during that session, Dana Newkirk had said the name Coyote, right?
Oh, that's correct.
They heard the name Coyote.
Right.
Well, in this area, the Tongva people had a mythical figure, one of the sky people, that they called the Sky Coyote. The Coyote, in their culture, is the trickster hero of the tribe.
That's really funny, because in Hellier they talk about the trickster all the time.
Yeah,
so
they always mention the trickster in the case, and that's the case here, is the trickster hero. And as in many Native American traditions of the area, so not just the Tongva, but a lot of people in this area, the Coyote ranges from a lighthearted tale of mischief and buffoonery to more serious stories in which the Coyote helps mankind. So in their culture, in this lore, the Sky Coyote would either kind of play tricks and have fun with the people there, or he would actually go down and help the people with their life, with you could even say helping them to evolve at some point. I mean, whether or not the Sky Coyote was real or not, that's questionable. You have to ask yourself, was it or not? It's what you believe. But interesting to us is the fact that they called them Sky People to begin with. You think, okay, for us, what are Sky People? What Sky People would be? UFOs, aliens, right?
Aliens, right? And this has also been touched upon when it comes to building the pyramids of Giza.
Yeah.
So if and there's a lot of cave paintings or carvings that do show what would appear to us as spacemen or even saucers in these dwellings from people that would have no idea what that was.
Yeah.
And there is that theory that could aliens have helped them devise and plans and build the pyramids at Giza. So when you think about the Native Americans and referring to sky people or beings, to them in that thought process is they're gods. But and the same thing happened in Egypt, but is it that, or are these just beings from another planet So they, are helping them, with their life currently.
You see it in all cultures. There are even pictures of Jesus Christ painted where you see a UFO in the sky. Why the painter would include that is beyond us, because at the time it's not like UFOs were a common occurrence that people reported on. They actually usually speculated that they were angelic in nature from God.
Right.
But you can clearly see a silver disc-like UFO in the background above Jesus as a baby.
Right, when he's being held by Mary. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not just the Native American people or the Egyptian people. It's all cultures around the world have these pictures, art, whatever, of UFOs or aliens or what have you in the background, almost like they're shadow players, like they're guiding you from a distance.
Right, they're footnotes, but yet they're more important than people think at the time, because they're not focusing on that. How long did it take people to notice in that picture of Mary and Jesus that this spacecraft was hovering in the very distant background?
And these aliens don't even have to only be from another planet in our universe. What if they're interdimensional, like the Yucca Man is?
Right.
Or is theorized to be.
Right.
Again, this is all theory, but I theorize that the Yucca Man could be another extension of these beings from another world, another dimension, another time even. You don't know.
Right.
But I think that something that was interesting to me, and we talked about it in the first part of this case, last week, but something that the people at Hellier touched upon is that there are a lot of theories that the Mothman case, which also had Men in Black and UFOs and ghosts reported at the time, was kind of a beacon, a signal, a distress signal set by whoever Injured Cold and his people really were, to let someone else know, hey, we're here, we need help, kind of thing. And it manifested as this paranormal activity. The UFO sightings, the Men in Black showed up. Is that what happens in these areas where some sort of energy is released that manifests as all these different things?
Right.
Or are these areas drawing these things individually to it?
Oh, it's the ultimate question, really. It's one of those things that we may never have the answer to.
No.
But, right, I mean, the thought in the Mothman case has been, was he coming to warn of terrible events coming up, like the Silver Bridge incident?
Yeah.
Or was that just something that happened at the time that he was there? Was that coincidence? Or, like you say, was he stuck there? Was he trying to tell someone, hey, this is where I'm at?
Yeah.
Using whatever means possible. We don't know. So, there's a lot of theories where this is concerned, and this isn't the only cryptid story.
No.
There are many, and they're called different things, not just in the United States, but all over the world.
What's interesting to me, though, I think the core of the story is that not only are we as people around the world more connected than we thought, but these creatures, these UFOs, these ghosts, all these stories are more connected at a deeper level than anyone could possibly imagine, I think. I think there's more connective threads connecting all of us than people want to admit. And I think that's why you see so many of these cases kind of crop up at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I agree. I totally agree with you. And I think that when you talk about connectedness, this is interesting to me, because we talked last episode about the connection with the government and with Edwards Air Force Base in particular, in this case with the Yucca Man, and also not just at Edwards, but the Marines that saw the cement monster on their way home. But now if you look at Dead Man's Hole, and it says if you go there, that you can see a sign that reads U.S. Navy Remote Training Area at an unmarked crossroads just before Sunshine Summit. And just like at Edwards and 29 Palms, the Marines train there side by side with the elusive Sasquatch of Southern California. So
it's still happening to this day.
And in heavily government areas where the military is training.
Why would the government pick this area to begin with to train their Marines? That's got to beg the question.
Right.
Do they know something that we don't?
Exactly.
I mean, it's you know.
Well, like just like we talked about before, I mean, the footage that NASA and the government finally confirmed is actual footage of UFOs that was put out by Tom DeLonge's group. Now they're, well, they can't deny it, so they've got to, confirm it now. I think there will be a time, like with all the footage they have from Edwards, of this creature going through the underground tunnels.
Yeah.
Someday that's going to be public knowledge.
Yeah.
So, will we be around to see that? I don't know. Yeah, but we can only hope, right?
It's really fascinating. I think, much like our podcast in general, I think the message to get here is never stop looking for the connections.
Right.
Never stop looking into the mysteries of the unknown, because you never know when someone is going to find the right thing that kind of blows the case wide open. I mean, like we said, Tom DeLonge and his people finding these videos a year before forced the government to admit that these events occurred, that these were UFOs. We have no idea what they were, right?
Exactly.
And yet that was a year after Tom DeLonge, an ordinary citizen who just happened to have a lot of money to create this group, was able to find it.
Right.
And so it tells you that, anyone can find the connections if you look hard enough. Just never stop asking the question. Never stop, trying to find the scientific explanation for it, because if you can't, it shows you that there is more happening in this world than anyone could possibly know.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, and who wants to stop looking?
No.
I think that if we don't allow ourselves to, try and question things around us, we just become part of the mundane every day. So I think it's important to definitely keep questioning.
Yeah.
And we are going to probably wrap up the Yucca Man on that note, because we will talk later about the Borrego Sandman.
A whole another case right there. So I think it's good that's a good way to end the Yucca Man for now. I think that one thing we'll do in the future is, if there are any updates, any news stories to add to old cases that we've covered, we'll do a special segment at the end where we update you on that.
And you're free to send us, if you have any information yourself.
You encountered the Yucca Man, someone who encountered the Yucca, you have pictures or video or audio, or just a story to tell.
Right.
Email us or contact us on social media. All the links will be in the description of our podcast, so feel free to follow us on all that. But yeah, tell us about it. Let us know what you've seen, what you've experienced.
Exactly. And we want to, we don't have a personal story to share with you today of a paranormal encounter. I mean, we're working on one right now to share with you, but at the moment we just want to cover something that is kind of important to us when it comes to the paranormal. One thing that really sort of bugs us to no end.
Yeah, it really irks me for sure. I mean, it's really annoying because it seems like something that just never wants to stop in today's culture. Don't get me wrong, I love a lot of paranormal shows. I love the interesting stuff they catch. I love watching it. But there's definitely a formula that comes with the more popular shows.
Right.
Where everything is scary. Everything is demonic or evil. If someone gets scratched, it must have been a terrifying demon who's trying to take your soul.
Right.
Kind of thing. And the worst ones by far are the ones who go around entertaining the notion rather than trying to disprove it, who spend an hour running around in the dark screaming at every little bump in the night,
right? Because
it must have been the demon, it must have been they're trying to kill them, kind of thing.
It's a poltergeist for sure.
Oh yeah,
all the time. I mean, that's the thing about it. As people interested in the paranormal, obviously, we tend to approach things from a very different angle. We talked a little bit about it in our first episode when we talked about the idea of quantum consciousness, that these communications that people have with what they call ghosts, spirits, what have you, could very simply be the energy left behind by those who have passed on. And based on that theory, what is there to be afraid of, in these scenarios of haunted locations? So if, let's say we go to the dream place to go, Waverly Hills. would love to go there, would love to investigate, but not with the intention of, oh my God, if I hear one bump, I'm going to be terrified.
Yeah.
It's definitely got to be evil spirits that are there.
If anyone ever hears an audible like growl of some sort, it must be a demon stalking you through the halls of this place. What people don't take the time to think about is how hard must it be for, you know, this energy, if it's intelligent and not a residual, to make contact with you. They're sitting there probably trying to scream and yell and trying to get your attention, but because they're not on our plane of existence, they're not on our level, pretty much, they can't get through to you.
Right.
So when you do hear them, it must have taken a lot of energy just to get a sound out, a growl or one word or something.
To even make something move, to make a noise.
Yeah.
You know, this is, you know, because we've actually sat and communicated ourselves with, you know, energy that's left behind. We have heard noises, but it's far fewer, you know, than what is portrayed on the popular ghost hunting shows, where, you know, every other second they're hearing a bang, something fell, something was thrown, someone got scratched, is my favorite. And that's always because it's got to be a demon, right? Well, the thing is, like Anthony was saying, if it takes a tremendous amount of energy for somebody to communicate with you or to get your attention, I mean, to me, the scratching makes a lot of sense.
We were fascinated ourselves with one night we were doing a session, and a straw in a cup was moving by itself. We have it on video. We've posted it online before in social media.
And we can share the link in the description.
Yeah, and again, it's not, you know, like, you know, someone floating in the air or something.
It's not earth shattering.
It's not nothing scary or, you know, going to change the course of human history.
Right.
But, you know, we were sitting at home. The air was off. There was no air flowing in the area. We made sure to test it to make sure there was nothing was caught on or anything that could be making it move, you know, artificially. And we found nothing.
And it was happening during a spirit box session.
Yeah, it was happening during a session. We asked it to, you know, show a sign that it was there, that it could understand us, and then it started moving the straw around in the cup. Not fast. It was kind of slow, but it was moving it around.
And we could ask it, well, can you move it the other direction? And it would move the other direction.
Yeah.
These are the little things that people who actually really go out and investigate, not on camera, are, you know, that's the things that we look at and marvel at and say, wow, that was really great, because you're getting an actual one-to-one response. But to think that every time you go into a supposed haunted location, it's going to be some earth-shattering, you know, whole house shaking, you know,
someone's gonna get possessed.
Exactly.
Pinned to the ceiling or something.
And my neck hurts. Oh, I'm burning. Oh, there's scratches. All of that, quite honestly, no disrespect to any of the people who have shows going on out there, but I mean, it's fear factor is what drives those shows. It's what drives ratings and drives people to even look up scary things on YouTube. It's because, you know, these people want to see something like that, and not necessarily for the reason of, oh, I just want to know there's life after death. They want to be scared. So, you know, for us, you know, we're not ever sitting there thinking like some of the shows do portray, aside from fear, is, oh, I can go to this place and I can cleanse it. I can make it move on so that people aren't scared anymore. I can, you know, exorcise this demon.
We're going to tell you right now, there is no getting rid of ghosts. That's not a real thing.
No, I mean, if that were a real thing, then people wouldn't constantly go back to the same locations to investigate. Like if someone had gone to the Lizzie Borden house and healed it and cleansed it, then why are people still going back to investigate the continuing things that they have going on there? It doesn't make any sense, and people don't even stop to think about that because they just want to see another episode.
And just so everyone knows, our annoyance at the situation isn't with anyone in particular, and it's not with everyday people. Our podcast hopes to educate people to not be so afraid of the things that they don't know about.
Exactly.
That's the whole point. We understand if the everyday person would be afraid of this because it's a natural thing to be afraid of something out of the ordinary.
That you don't understand, right?
We're talking about are the people who are told by Hollywood executives to sensationalize something out of nothing.
Right.
You know, there are people especially when there are people in homes who are truly scared. An investigator should go there not promising to get rid of the ghosts, not promising to get rid of their problems, and not giving into the person's fear. They should be there to reassure and educate the person about what's happening, show them the evidence they caught, and explain to them why it's nothing to be afraid of.
And there are a couple of shows who do try and go in that direction.
Yeah, of course.
But of course, it's never without the added scare factor in certain things. And
The ones that get me the most are the reenactments
Yes.
with like CGI ghosts or something, or the ones that
Right.
have to show you with a diagram of what part of the house that they're in at each time. Like we wouldn't know that they're in a living room.
yeah, as if more high tech means more real. I'm not sure where that direction came from, but
Recently, even one that's been using a fog machine as an
Yeah.
investigative tool, and they'll talk about how there's a disruption in the fog, and I never can see on camera what it is they're talking about.
no, and let's face it, fog is in motion as it is from a fog machine.
Yeah.
So to say that you could see something moving and disturbing it, I mean, it's an entity in motion. Even if a bug flew through it, there's going to be a disturbance. So I just think that, it's a lack of just coming and being straightforward and saying, okay, well, this isn't anything that you should be afraid of. Think of if you were, no longer with us and your energy was there and you didn't understand where you were, you didn't understand what happened to you, and why can't these people hear me and see me? To me, that's more sad and confusing than it is anything to be afraid of. So we hope that more people can get on that level and realize, the fear of quote unquote ghosts comes from Hollywood movies, which are great for entertainment, but it's not reality.
That's why we always mention Hellier, because it's such a great program and documentary. The show really spoke to us as paranormal enthusiasts because it didn't promise, to actually show goblins.
Right.
In the case, there's actually one of the things they always talk about is their campaign slogan is one of the bad reviews they got is "No goblins, 1 star," and they always talk about that because everyone goes into watching it thinking they're actually going to see a goblin, but that's not the case. That's not what the point of the show is.
No, and they never claimed that they're going out to actually capture goblin.
No,
it's just
the case even turned so far beyond what the original claim was.
exactly.
The goblins really don't have much to do with it anymore. But
No.
the point is, don't go into these situations expecting to have all the answers, expecting even the paranormal to even show itself the first time,
Right.
and don't go into it thinking that you'll be able to get rid of the ghosts, because the energy, let's face it, people have passed on in all parts of the world. It doesn't matter where you're at. There's energy out there everywhere.
Yep.
And it's about trying to educate yourself to come to terms with the fact that it's there and live with it, to understand
exactly.
it, to understand that it's not there to hurt you, it's just trying to exist. And maybe you can even take the opportunity to understand it more and help it, whether it's a person, just another form of energy, what have you. They're probably just as scared and confused as you are.
I actually find it comforting to think that there is a way to still communicate once we're gone. So to me, it's not scary. I think it's intriguing.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to make it a point to bring that up.
Yeah, it's something we see a lot these days
all the time.
on TV, especially because we're all home more now.
Right.
We have more time to watch shows than we did before. And seeing all the different kinds of shows on TV that kind of play into the fear aspect of the paranormal that is presented to the public, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because I think there's so much that could be done scientifically with research and study that isn't, because the focus on the paranormal is always the scary side, and so people just dismiss it.
Right. Well,
You know?
absolutely. And maybe that's a myth that we can help dispel along the way.
I hope so.
That's a goal anyway. So before we wrap up in a minute, we just wanted to give you a little insight into what our next topic is going to be.
Yeah, this will be a good one.
And this is something that, I personally just learned of recently. So it's going to be covering an actual ruin in the state of California.
Actually, it's in San Francisco, I believe.
Correct. Right.
This place is, and we'll let you guys know it now so that maybe going into next week's episode, you can have questions prepared. But it's called the Sutro Baths, right?
Right, the Sutro Baths, and they were built in the late 1800s. and it was a very big tourist attraction.
Yeah.
And it was literally it was huge. And we're going to describe it and give you all the details on our next episode. But just suffice to say, there has been a multitude of various different kinds of paranormal activity now associated with these ruins.
You may think it's just ghosts, but it's not.
No.
There's so much more going on in this area than people realize. And we'll also leave you with a little nugget of the mysterious person who built this bath.
Right.
We just recently learned has a connection to a case of 2 people who went missing in the Grand Canyon.
In the 20s, right?
He happened to be the last one to see them before they disappeared.
Yeah.
And no one's ever found this young couple who disappeared there in the 1920s. And
Right.
this is the same guy who built the suture baths now that has all this activity in it.
Yeah, it's really interesting that there was that connection. And, once you hear the story of all the different types of activity at this place, I think you will find it as interesting as we do. It's been, the subject of a number of different paranormal teams that have gone in there and tried to investigate. So
I'll leave you with this. It's not necessarily the ghosts that you should be afraid of there.
No, true.
There's something else that sounds like it's far more sinister.
Right,
and it's not supernatural in the least.
Exactly.
So that's.
And there's also a tunnel involved. I'll just throw that out there.
Tunnels if there's not a tunnel, I'm not in it.
Exactly. Exactly. So look for that next week, and until then, stay tuned, and you can contact us through our socials for any of your own personal stories.
Yes, please share this podcast. Please subscribe. All that really helps us when we're building it up. Thank you to everyone who's been so supportive on our podcast. Especially Twitter has been a huge place for us. You guys have been great. Even, John Tenney himself has liked some of our tweets.
That's always nice.
Which is a big compliment. So thank you to everyone who's been so receiving of our podcast, and we can't wait to continue bringing this to you every week. So,
that's right. Thank you, guys, and stay tuned.
Everyone, have a great night. Stay safe. Be healthy. And we'll talk to you next week with episode 4, the Sutro Baths.
The Sutro Baths. Over and out.